Scratch. We'll just do this from the top as if nothing had ever happened. All right, take two. God, you look like Ed Rollins, and that scares the hell out of me.
I hope that's a good thing.
I'm glad to see everybody out here tonight. A lot of good friends, a lot of new friends, and we're thankful you're here tonight. We have a very special treat tonight with us. We are really blessed to have this man in our presence to give us a presentation about the details of secret intelligence of the CIA. He was recently nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. He's a former Marine infantry officer. He's conducted false flag operation, and he's quite a gentleman. And I would just like to present to you now one Robert David Steele, of the former CIA.
Mike has been after me for a year to come down here, and I'm very glad to do this. My father lives across the bridge, and so this is a twofer for me. But let me thank Mike, American Freedom Farm. He's been doing this for a long time, and everyone can look up UnitedCountiesOfAmerica.com. I think it's a really good idea. The whole concept here is to take back the power at the county level. So I think Mike is an American hero on his own. And I like the fact that he's using PRUMMELL, which has been a supporter of me. PRUMMELL is what I want to put into the Trump channel, so that Trump can bypass Facebook and Google and Twitter, and he can send out what we call a trumpet, and then 150 million voters can come back in, and Trump can literally see a presidential dashboard at the county level of how people feel about everything, and the congressional district level. So the plan is I'll just talk for about 30 minutes, similar to what I did in New York City when we brought together the alt-right and the people of color, the leaders of people of color. Something huge happened when Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders came onto the scene. They opened people's minds to the fact that we live in a rigged system. I had to run for president in 2012 to find out that we have 8 accredited political parties. Constitution, Green, Libertarian, Natural Law, Reform, and Socialist are the other 6, and they are blocked from ballot access. Independents are over 50% of our eligible voters, and they are blocked from ballot access. So beginning around 2011, I got interested in election reform, and I put together some ideas, but it wasn't until recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, that I began to understand that the deep state pervades every single part of our lives. And we are poor because the deep state wants it that way. Now the deep state is not, as so many people assume, the national security state. It's not the generals and the spies and the politicians. They're the best of the servant class. The deep state starts with the Rothschilds and the Vaticans. And then they control the central banks, which are not government banks, they're private banks. And as long as the Rothschilds and the Vatican control the central banks of every country, no amount of public policy, no matter how honestly it might be derived, is going to make a difference. When these people want to influence world events, they can start a war. They can change the interest rate. You all saw the Libor scandal in London. They were manipulating the interest rates in order to clear their own bad debts and shift the burden onto the poor. So everything in our lives is touched by the deep state. So you have the Rothschilds and the Vatican at the top, then the central banks, and then you have what is generally in every party a two-party tyranny. So in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in Australia, and Canada, generally 2 parties pretend to have a functioning democracy. We don't have a functioning democracy. In fact, most of our presidents have been elected by 26% of the eligible voters. Barack Obama was elected by 26%, Donald Trump was elected by 27%, okay? 26% voted against him, and 47% did not vote at all, all right? Now, I have been trying to help Donald Trump since July of 2015. I wrote the first article, Countercoup, How Donald Trump Can Win, in Counterpunch, which is not a fan of Donald Trump's. And I've been trying to show him that the GOP is his worst enemy. Worse than the Democratic Party. Paul Ryan, Scott Walker, Reince Priebus, and Mike Pence are not Donald Trump's friends. Okay? They're stabbing him in the back every single day. We're going to have a pedophilia scandal. And it is going to knock 4 to 6 very senior Republican senators out of office. I'm thinking suicide, jail, and resignation. Okay? If that happens and he doesn't do an election reform act, then the Democrats are going to take back the House and impeach him, and take back the Senate and convict him. And then we will have Mike Pence as the deep state president going forward, which I do not like at all. So the deep state goes from the Rothschilds to the central banks to the two-party tyranny, and pedophilia turns out to be a major control mechanism. People are drawn into the pedophilia game, which includes not only abusing children, but killing them and exploiting them for body parts and bone marrow. This is something that just now is starting to come out into the mainstream. Pizzagate scared the hell out of the elite, because all of a sudden citizen journalists started looking at Facebook and they were following trails. They were starting to do the FBI's job for the FBI. And let me say, the FBI is a theatrical agency. It's not a real counterintelligence organization. It's completely under control. So bottom line for me is the deep state then goes down to the secret intelligence communities. I've just reviewed a book by David Talbot called The Devil's Chessboard. And I write summary reviews, so you can read my review at Amazon or at 58IOTA and get a real good sense of what the book says. Bottom line is that CIA was created by Wall Street, not by Harry Truman. Wall Street devised the whole concept, sold it to Truman, and then slipped in Allen Dulles and all of these bad covert action things that were done. I turned down the job on covert action staff. It was beneath my moral threshold. And so CIA, essentially after World War II, institutionalized evil in the US government. And it became the way in which the elite could smuggle guns, drugs, cash, gold, and small children. The reason we have 1,000 military bases all over the seas is not to project military power. It's so that CIA has lily pads through which to run massive smuggling operations. And I would certainly advise the president to close all 1,000 of those bases, okay? Unfortunately, the secret intelligence world also became the primary means of spying on US politicians and judges and blackmailing them. CIA has always been good at blackmailing selected people. For example, Wayne Madsen has done an excellent piece on how John McCain and Lindsey Graham is a closet gay, very well known, but they are both being blackmailed by the CIA, and they are under control. Marco Rubio and Chuck Schumer, I think, have similar blackmail issues in their past and present. NSA, after 9/11, not only started doing mass surveillance of all US citizens, but it started going after our politicians and judges and insider trader information in a big way. And so NSA now has been blackmailing politicians, US politicians and US judges. Okay? Now, what's interesting, and I've done a one-pager for the president that he's read, there is no legislative charter for NSA. It was created by executive order. The president could close NSA down tomorrow. And William Binney, who is a whistleblower, by the way, I'm not a whistleblower, I'm the most published intelligence reformer in the English language. Okay, with 8 books, 2 of which have forwards by senators before they realized I planned to cut them off at the knees. Warren and Roberts. Good senators, but they're impotent in the larger scheme of things. So the deep state uses the secret intelligence services as a smuggler and as an enforcer and as the controller for the media narrative. I mean, I used to know Massimo Calabresi, Time Magazine bureau chief for Washington back in the day. He was an honest journalist. When this whole John Brennan, who I call advisedly a Saudi whore, John Brennan is taking lots of money from Saudi Arabia, probably most of it in offshore accounts, okay? He is, in my view, someone who should be deeply investigated by the FBI. and probably prosecuted for being a traitor, an agent of a foreign power, without question. As has been Hillary Clinton, of course. When John Brennan devised these lies about the Russians hacking the election, I was one of 29 people that stood up against him. And I'm very pleased to have done so, because the truth is that the only person that hacked the US election was Hillary Clinton. She stole 13 primaries from Bernie Sanders. This has been documented by Stanford University. And what changed at the last bit was that she was stopped from stealing those same states from Donald Trump. At the same time that you had the New York Times, the NYPD release Anthony Weiner emails and so forth. And by the way, the point I was going to get back to about Massimo Calabresi, he wrote a cover story for Time magazine on Russians hacking the election that was probably drafted by the covert action staff at CIA. It was absolute crap. And I am the one who, it's a bestseller on Amazon, and by the way, I'm not pimping my books or my short papers, because everything I do at Amazon is also free online. Okay, so everything I publish at Amazon is also free online if you look for the title. Okay, I just use Amazon because that's how I reach 2 million more people. All right. So all of this is the deep state, and it includes the labor union leaders. It includes the religions, who are basically teaching everybody to not question authority. Okay? It includes the universities, where people are buying up economics departments and they're trying to spread all these lies. We're not actually running out of natural resources, and we're not actually overpopulated. Okay? What we have is 5 billion poor people whose brains are the one unlimited resource we have on the planet. So, deep state. God bless Donald Trump. I can't say this often enough. For all of his flaws, and no matter how this turns out going forward, I mean, I certainly hope he's not going to let Jared Kushner start World War III. Kushner has been overheard talking to an Israeli intelligence officer about providing the Saudi Arabian military with nuclear weapons. And the Israeli has been overheard telling Kushner that a limited nuclear war between Saudi Arabia and Iran would be a good thing. Just as Israel was behind, now I'm talking Zionist Israel, not the good Jews. There are only 9 million Jews in America, okay? Out of 150 million voters, the power of Israel in the United States is not based on 9 million loyal Jewish voters. It's based on bribery and blackmail, okay? Including Jeffrey Epstein, who is a Mossad agent. He's a fake billionaire. He was given $1 billion by a real billionaire, and his mission was to set up the No Name Hotel in New York and Lolita Island, and get as many people as possible doing terrible things to children. And he has both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton each traveling separately to Lolita Island, because each has different tastes. Okay? By the way, his partner is Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, Israeli super spy. There's a book I've reviewed called Robert Maxwell, Israeli Super Spy. This is the guy that compromised all US software systems, from NSA all the way down to local law enforcement, okay, with something called PRUMMELL. That was the first major Israeli backdoor into all of our systems. Anything NSA collects, anything most law enforcement agencies get is in Tel Aviv by midnight. Okay, these guys are good. I've lost my train of thought. Oh yes, thank you so much. That really helps me a lot. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell profiled Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka Trump from birth. And that the series of eligible Jewish bachelors that were placed before them were no accident. Okay? This is how deeply the deep state works to protect its interests. And I have to emphasize that the Rothschilds are not really Jews per se. They're more like Khazarian mafia. Okay? And the Rothschilds and the Jesuits are kind of like the top crime family in the world. And then you have the Zionist Jews at the top of the Israeli government, including Netanyahu. I pronounced that deliberately. And the guy's an idiot. I mean, he is a criminal idiot who wants to start a war in the Middle East because he thinks it's good for Israel. It's not good for Israel. And then you have the loyal Jews within the government and Israel, including many of my Mossad colleagues, all of whom turn against the government when they resign. When they leave the government, they all say we should not be doing what we're doing in Palestine, we should not be building walls, we should not be inciting riots, we should not be supporting ISIS. You all know ISIS was created by the US, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, okay? And then finally you have the normal Jews all over the world whose worst crime is providing a safe house or a rental car or a burn phone or whatever. They're called Sayonim, helpers, okay? And that's, the Catholics and the Jews have more helpers everywhere in the world than anyone might imagine. So that's the deep state. And what the deep state has done to us, essentially, through the Federal Reserve, is looted the United States of America. And when they passed the Federal Reserve Act and the Income Tax Act, what they were basically doing was staging a coup d'etat and taking over the US government and owning everything in the United States of America. And so I have recently put together a one-pager on how to take down the Federal Reserve. It can be done. I see with interest that not only in Russia and the Philippines, but in Thailand and other ASEAN countries, there is now talk of nationalizing the central banks. There are now ASEAN countries doing full-up counterintelligence studies on the Rothschilds and everybody they know. And what's really interesting about the NSA database, and I've done a one-pager on this for the president, if William Binney, who is a whistleblower and is the most ethical, best NSA senior executive ever to leave NSA, if William Binney were put in charge of the NSA database, in that database we have every email and every call ever made by any elite pedophile in the United States of America in the last 10 years. And we also have every email and cell call of every one of the 500 traitors across the US government. But NSA doesn't do counterintelligence support to the FBI, nor does it do signal support to clandestine operations. When I was chasing terrorists overseas, I asked the local NSA guy if he could get me some hits. And he said, no, he said, hey, you're not a priority. He says, all right, here's a bottle of scotch. He said, okay, I'll give you 1 day. I got 15 hits on terrorists in 1 day for a bottle of scotch. And then it stopped. And I said, come on, keep this coming. And he said, no, I'm sorry. He said, our priority is around Contra and Noriega and this other stuff, okay? So we have a very dysfunctional U.S. secret intelligence system. And if you want to read what I think about it, just go to phi-beta-iota.net and look up fixing intelligence. Okay, so what is to be done about the deep state? I never expected Donald Trump to win. I went to bed in tears at 10 o'clock at night. And my wife, who was no fan of Donald Trump, woke me up at midnight and said, you may want to watch this. And I watched with tears of joy from midnight until 3 a.m. when God's little miracle happened, okay? Now, there are some that think Donald Trump was tapped, and it may well be, whether by God or by other deep state powers, I don't know. But the bottom line is that when Donald Trump was legitimately elected as president, the deep state panicked. John Brennan went nuts and started telling all these lies. And I was on Russia Today thanking John Brennan, because in 90 days he accomplished what I haven't been able to accomplish in 30 years. He managed to completely discredit the secret intelligence world in the eyes of the public. And that's an accomplishment. And he also managed to help the public understand that the real fake news is called the Crap News Network and the New York Times and the Washington Post. So, bottom line here is John Brennan and Lawrence Lessig, who, by the way, was hiding out in Iceland during the Electoral College thing. He was afraid for his life. They tried to flip the Electoral College. I mean, I don't know if any of you remember, this is jury tampering on a cosmic scale. They tried to flip the Electoral College with these lies about Russia hacking the election. Russia snooped. So does Israel. So do France and Germany and everybody else, okay? Russia did not hack the election. It's now known that Seth Rich, who was murdered by the Clintons, probably, Seth Rich is the one who leaked all those documents. And William Binney has said NSA also leaked some of the documents because they were furious with Hillary Clinton for her mishandling of classified information. We have evidence on the Anthony Weiner laptop of Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin, her Saudi-provided girlfriend, sending classified information to IP addresses in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. That's treason. Documented treason by any definition. Okay? So what to do about the deep state? Donald Trump made it possible for #unrigged to go viral. Cynthia McKinney and I came together. Cynthia and I have known each other since 2008 when she ran for president of the Green Party. And we've come together and we have discovered that there is a value proposition on the table and it expires in September. The value proposition is that the alt-right and people of color can come together and agree to set aside all ideological and issue differences and focus only on restoring integrity to the U.S. government. So we created We the People, Unity for Integrity, and she arranged for black leaders in New York City to meet Judge Napolitano. I'm high on the judge. I'd love for him to be a Supreme Court Justice. First, I'd like him to be director of the FBI. He would be a phenomenal director of the FBI because he's the only guy there that respects the Constitution. Okay? I mean, he's written some deep, heavy books on the Constitution that I recommend to everybody. If alt-right and the people of color can come together, then the Latinos, the independents, the libertarians, the Greens can join in, and then we can go to all of the alt-left people and say, aren't you tired of being herded by a sheepdog? Because the People's Party is just sheepdog 2.0. Bernie Sanders has made it clear he is not going to bite the Democratic hand that has been feeding him all this time. So sheepdog 2.0, we need to get those people to understand that they have a chance to restore integrity to the U.S. government. So what's the concept? We have published a manifesto, and I'm pleased to say that we own all of the first screen of search results and half of the second screen of search results for #unrigged. But we've done all we can do. Now what needs to happen, we're talking about getting all of the black churches across America to issue a public invitation to the alt-right, the alt-left, the independents, the libertarians, and the Greens. And what we want them to do is we want them to have a conversation at the county level, the way Mike has conceptualized. We want them to have a conversation at the county level, and then we want them to occupy this summer, when our members are home and cannot avoid those pesky constituents, we want them to occupy the front lawns and home offices of every senator and every representative, demanding that they sign the Integrity Pledge. And the Integrity Pledge is nothing more than a one-pager which says they will co-sponsor and pass the Election Reform Act of 2017 in September when they return. Now, in an ideal world, Donald Trump would see that he cannot survive without this. And he would lead a team, including Cynthia McKinney, Ralph Nader, Jesse Ventura, Virgil Good, Patrick Buchanan, and others. I personally like Brother Cornel West. I mean, I think his book, Democracy Matters, is a Nobel-level piece of work, unlike most of the crap that most of the black intellectuals publish. Cynthia and I are in agreement on this. The black people have been misserved by the intellectuals, and they've been misserved by the Democratic Party. And what Cynthia has told Donald Trump is that if you make policy for the black people, they will shift away from the Democratic Party and toward the Trump movement, not the Republican Party. The Republican Party is largely worthless, in my humble opinion. So the 12 elements of the Electoral Reform Act, and I think I'll wind up with this, are easy to find. If you go to, if you just look up #unrigged, you'll get to our manifesto. But essentially, the 12 elements have to be done all together. It's not enough to fix gerrymandering or campaign finance reform. You have to do all 12 together. So universal voting, and prisoners don't necessarily lose their vote. Particularly prisoners that are being put in jail by New York City for marijuana so they can redline their districts and build fancy condos. Okay, there's an awful lot of people going to prison in order to make banks rich, and that needs to stop. Then you have free and equal ballot access, free and equal media access, public financing of campaigns. One of the really big ones is, of course, gerrymandering, tightly drawn districts. I didn't realize this. One of the things about this is I keep attracting new information from people. Congressional districts are allocated on the basis of all adults, including illegal aliens and foreigners. California would lose 4 congressional seats if we didn't count the illegal aliens and foreigners upon which their congressional districts are based. Okay? So that's one of them. Another big one is paper ballots, counted publicly on site with exit polls. Another big one is instant runoff. So that you vote for your first, second, and third preference, and that means that you don't end up with a 26% candidate while 6 other people split the vote the other way. Legislative clarity and transparency, so all legislation must be posted in advance with no secret clauses, and it should have change tracking, so you can see exactly which senator and which Republican made changes to it. And last but not least, and this is Helen Brown's contribution, economic and financial democracy. We need to restore unions. We need to repeal Taft-Hartley 14B. I'm friends with Del Spurlock, who is was the Deputy Secretary of Labor under Ronald Reagan. We need to make it possible for people to unionize. The labor leaders of America have betrayed labor. They've sold out. They really are not effective labor leaders. And finally, nationalize the Federal Reserve. We cannot have democracy in America for so long as the Federal Reserve is owned and operated by the Rothschilds. Let me stop there, and I'll take questions.
I'll be the first one to ask.
Hold on, the lady there, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you felt that the big pharmaceutical companies and the medical industry is part of that state.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was just reading about the plan to take all nutrients out of food and extend GMOs to everybody. Essentially, we are being dumbed down by design. We're being fed poisoned food, poisoned air. The school system is taking our kids away from their parents. The economic system is ending what used to be a very workable system of a one-income family where a child had a constant parent in attendance all the time. The entire system is rigged. Every possible aspect of it is rigged, to include Hollywood movies.
Yes.
I mean, that's a propaganda factory. And certainly to include Fox News. Okay? I mean, I'm sorry, but 3 idiots in the morning and 5 idiots in the afternoon does not do it for me. Okay? I mean, I like Tucker Carlson, I like the judge, I like Bret Baier. Beyond that, it's garbage. So the whole system is rigged, and one of the things, I guess I'll tell you why I was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Because I've spent 30 years, well, first off, because I stopped World War III by slamming down on Brennan. The Russians showed enormous restraint in not overreacting to Barack Obama's entirely unjustified closing of their beach houses. You really want to hurt a guy, close his beach house. And the 35 officers that were expelled. But mostly I was nominated because I've spent 30 years trying to shift the craft of intelligence, which I care about deeply, away from spies and secrecy that favor war and waste toward open sources that favor peace and prosperity. One of the things no one does in the United States is called true cost economics. We don't do holistic analytics and we don't do true cost economics, okay? Now, I'm overweight. I'm overweight in part because I lack self-discipline, but I'm also overweight in part because I'm eating a lot of crap that the Food and Drug Administration has approved, falsely saying it is good for me. They're not. The Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control in the United States of America are criminal networks. They're completely in the pocket of big agriculture and big pharma. So holistic analytics means you have to have a population that is eating well, that does not have water poisoned by fluoride and all this other stuff. You have to have a school system that raises kids up as whole human beings with proper respect for their values and so forth, rather than California trying to beat the values out of the children, and so forth. Now, true cost economics, almost everything we make in the West would not be profitable if we did true cost economics. If we actually understood how much water, how much fuel, how many toxins are emitted, how much child labor is in each of these things, how much tax avoidance, how much regulatory avoidance. We don't have an honest government. The unemployment rate is actually 23%. Okay, John Williams at Shadow Stats does a really good job on this. The unemployment rate is not 4 or 5%, which is U1, and it's not 10%, which is U6. It's 23%. And everywhere I go, I ask how many people in your area are unemployed, and they say 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. It's a constant. You, sir.
And the Rockefeller, in my belief, the Rockefellers and the Masons had a big to do with 9/11. I kind of like they funded it. I think it was a U.S. hit on U.S. soil.
All right, I will comment on that. 9/11 was planned by the Israelis. We got 13 different countries warned us about it in advance. Dick Cheney swore them all to secrecy, and months in advance of 9/11 declared a counterterrorism exercise for the whole country for 9/11. Okay? Dick Cheney was personally responsible for 9/11. Dick Cheney personally orchestrated everything that happened in New York and the missile that hit the Pentagon. Okay? 9/11 was controlled demolitions. AIG was pre-positioned with explosives for Hollywood theatrical effect. I think the buildings were hit by drones. I've cleaned up after airplane accidents. And number one, an airplane doesn't go through 14 steel beams every 14 inches. The titanium engines basically hit a wall and fall back. The rest of the plane falls back. And you have luggage and body parts and seats and everything, okay? So those 3 buildings, one of which was not hit at all, were brought down by controlled demolitions. 9/11 was also a massive closure to the U.S. Gold War against Russia. We sought to destroy the Russian economy. Buzzy Krongard moved in with George Tenet at CIA in 1998, and he ran what was called the Black Eagle Trust. We spent $250 billion in illicit, off-the-books money to try and destroy the Russian economy. It's an act of war. By the way, I don't know if many of you know this, but we actually incited Pearl Harbor. We did 8 acts of war against the Japanese in order to force them to do Pearl Harbor. Nobody ever mentions that, okay? So the Saudis, by the way, were just logistical support. Most of the patsies were not Saudis. They just had Saudi passports, okay? I would say it was definitely a U.S. hit on U.S. soil managed by Dick Cheney, but it was an Israeli wet dream. And a year prior to 9/11, a major Israeli effort was made to deepen the channel. They were planning ahead to the day when they would have to destroy the crime scene. And Rudy Giuliani, trained prosecutor that he is, was the first to help destroy the crime scene. This was also insurance fraud. Insurance companies are not stupid. Okay, this was a $7 billion guaranteed payout that was probably covered by the Rothschilds. The Rockefellers are the best of the servant class under the Rothschilds. Okay, they don't actually own anything.
And they're all Masons.
Yes, Freemasonry, I have to say, you know that there's 33 degrees of Freemasonry, and then there's 34, 35, 36. Okay, so that's above and below the I on the dollar bill. And it's the evil ones at the very top. The 33 below and below think they're good citizens. Just like Opus Dei has its own hierarchy. And so basically the Freemasons have been, since time immemorial, a secret society. This is based on reading. I have no direct knowledge. But based on my extensive reading, at the very highest levels of Freemasonry, you have essentially an international governing board that decides who gets to die and who gets to live. Every single one of us is nothing more than a gerbil on a wheel for these people. Now, what's really interesting to me is that I don't think they factored in the internet or Donald Trump or free will. And I think we're at a turning point in history when we actually have the power to put them out of business. And one of the reasons why I do a lot on truth and reconciliation, people tell me, why are you allowing pedophiles and all these other evildoers to get away? I said, because I want them to get out of the way. When I was chasing terrorists full time, I mean, if we captured a terrorist, basically we could torture him, in which case he would give us false leads and we'd waste a lot of time, or we could treat him with dignity and show him an exit strategy, that would yield a vast treasure trove of information that could be easily proven to be true. Now, Sessions and Trump have arrested by some counts no less than 1,500 pedophiles, no more than 3,000 pedophiles. That's a low-level number. That's the bottom. You know, Rico, you work your way up, okay? So the elite, between Pizzagate, Pedogate, and these arrests, the elite is panicking. The elite is seriously concerned, as best I can tell. And so I want to give them a truth and reconciliation exit strategy. Keep what you got, but get out of our way. Because I believe we can create infinite wealth. And let me just say that open source everything engineering, which is part of what got me looked at, and I've already said on the record that I don't deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. I want to help Trump, Putin, Xi, and Modi in India earn the Nobel Peace Prize. All I want is a job. Okay? I would like to build this. I'd like to spend the rest of my life building this, because here's what's cool. Open source everything engineering allows you to give the rest of the world a Western standard of living at 10% of the cost. So a John Deere tractor, which costs $200,000 and can't be repaired in the field, is replaced by an open source tractor which costs $20,000 and has plug-and-play parts, most of which can be done by 3D printing with recycled plastic. Okay? I mean, we're at the beginning of a really bold new era. Yes, sir?
On one of your videos, you mentioned giving pardons to some of the government officials and things by Trump to get them to kind of get out from underneath the scrutiny and everything and the blackmail.
Can I explain it to them?
My question was, I wonder, would some of them need to go to jail? Because I think some of them have to go to jail to see that. I don't think I'd give pardons to all of them. But,
let me just say, I would rather not be the person who decides that. Now, let me tell you what I've told in another video. Most of our members of Congress are being blackmailed, not just bribed. So if we have an election reform act, we can take care of the bribery part. We basically make sure that they no longer need to rely on these massive contributions. However, the blackmail part is harder. The concept that I have is that a properly constituted FBI would offer every member of Congress being blackmailed an opportunity to confess, receive absolution, a presidential pardon, provided they fully identify who is blackmailing them. And then we hang the blackmailers. We go after the blackmailers. We go after the blackmailers in a big time. So it's not for me to say who should mete out justice or not, although I will say that I think women are better at this because they don't go for vindictiveness, they go for compassion. There's an excellent book on a moral compass, and it basically shows women are the future leaders of the world because they're better at balancing stuff. I mean, we guys tend to be too black and white, and you know, I want to kill something. So for me, nothing else matters except election integrity, and it can be done this summer. But I don't know how to get it out there. Cynthia and I are talking about trying to get all the black churches. Yes, sir. You've been very patient in the back.
You know, it says in the Bible, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and high places. This evil that we're trying to fight goes back a long, long way. It's probably a spiritual evil when you're speaking of the Vatican and this Jewish cabal that we're talking about. These are the same people that put the Almighty God's Son on the cross. This is a very strong evil that we're fighting. And I'm not sure we're barking up the right tree by going Republican or Democrat. I think Republican and Democratic Party are two wings to the same bird.
Yep.
And the Federal Reserve usurped this government in 1913, and I'm under the impression that they are in control of the election, especially with these electronic voting.
And we're all in agreement. The Federal Reserve and the IRS need to go.
Yeah, so this current election, and we're talking about Donald Trump, we're putting our hopes in Donald Trump. I would believe that Donald Trump has also been appointed by the Federal Reserve.
It's possible, and it doesn't matter. The title of our manifesto is #Unrig Beyond Trump and Sanders. What they have done is open a door that you can go through now at the county level, one lawn at a time. In fact, I even had this concept of these little fiberglass piles of dog shit that people could ceremoniously put on the lawn of their congressman. You know, so $10 for $10 donation, you get a little pile of dog shit with a little flag that has his name, you know, his or her name. I mean, it would be kind of viral. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was looking at one of your interviews, and you mentioned accomplishing all 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Can you tell me what you think those goals actually are, and do you believe them to be functional and good goals? And do you believe that if everything was open and transparent and open, that the majority of the people would actually support these goals?
Let's distinguish between two. This is a trick question. I favor abolishing the United Nations. Okay? So the United Nations is part of the control mechanism. It's a worthless piece of crap. It delivers less than 1 to 5% of every donor dollar down to the bottom level. So forget about the United Nations and NATO. The Sustainable Development Goals are actually about providing the 5 billion poor with food and water and a living and a reason to not move to Europe. Okay, I mean, I've said on TV many times, if you bomb the shit out of everybody else, they're going to move to your neighborhood. Because it's the only neighborhood not being bombed. Okay, so when are we going to figure this out? So I favor, and I've said this before, the 5 billion brains that are now in poverty are the one unlimited resource we have on Earth. And I think we need to restore humanity. We need to focus on giving people their daily bread. It's in the Lord's Prayer. So basic income, food, water, the whole bit. Now come back over to here. We'll come back to you.
Well, I got a question that maybe is a little different, but it's about Title 4D. Title 4D is under Social Security, and it's what drives the whole family law, child support, you know, between the federal and the state. And myself, having been involved in that for almost 20 years, is that I'm seeing that what it is it's like a massive organized crime, trafficking child.
Yes.
Child trafficking under the color of law. And it is tearing this country apart. And what I also see is that the states are getting dollars, 2 to 3 to 1, for every child that they adopt out, every child support dollar that they tend to hijack, and I don't know if any of it that's rule of law or constitution. How can we how do we change this or get rid of it?
Well, I think restoring integrity to Congress is a starting point. First off, let me say I also have read about child protective services basically being in the child trade business and taking kids away from families and then selling them in the I'm on record as saying I don't think the federal government should be allowed to tax anybody. We're the United States of America, not the United Imperium of America. So one of the proposals I put forward in my memorandum for the president, which there's been 3 versions, and across the 3, about 4 million people have read it. This is part of the problem we have with Priebus as a traitor. Trump is not hearing what people are saying on the White House comment line. And he's not seeing what's being put on the White House petition thing. We actually have screenshots of our petition losing votes. Okay? We have screenshots, all right? So the whole system is manipulating. And Priebus has basically been lying to the president about what the public has been trying to tell him. Now, I think that we should completely cancel the IRS on all taxes except for something called an automated payment transaction tax. The existing tax system is based on a tiny little slice called lower income class people. Okay, it's based on taxing the incomes of essentially the middle class and the poor. It doesn't cover corporate transactions, it doesn't cover Wall Street stock and currency transactions. So Edgar Feige's genius is to have an automated payment transaction tax that is like 0.006 on every transaction, including cash transactions in and out of banks. Okay? That produces a lot of revenue, and it goes to the states. And the states then allocate money to the federal government for those narrowly defined purposes of the federal government. And last but not least, you can't go to war without getting the public to agree on raising the rate in order to pay for the war. So no more wars based on borrowed money and chicken pox, like the neocons doing the bidding of Goldman Sachs. You know, Goldman Sachs made some bad bets on oil. At least I've been told this. And they want a war in the Middle East because they bet that oil would go high and it stayed down around 50 bucks. So for me, I really have to emphasize this. I no longer do micro issues. There's only one meta issue that matters, and that's restoring integrity to Congress. Because even if Donald Trump were Hillary Clinton in drag, an honest Congress is exactly what we would need. So the Election Reform Act, I think I've identified the single intervention point in the next 90 days that could save this country. But all I can do is talk about it. We need someone to do it. Yes, sir.
What do you think about the Arizona passing the gold and silver peace act at 16 to 14?
I'm okay with that, but again, it's micro, okay? I mean, if Arizona were serious, they would put Senator McCain in a senile home, okay? I mean, Arizona's in deep shit. McCain has done absolutely nothing for Arizona water, for example. I mean, if I had been Senator McCain, I would have given Fort Huachuca $100 million and said, I want 3 water desalination plants in the Gulf, and I want you to be delivering 20 million gallons a day by next year. Okay, so McCain hasn't done much for Arizona. And again, that's a micro issue. Everything you see around you is a micro issue. It's a distraction. You know, everything George Soros does to create gender wars, these mind control kids shooting up churches in Charleston, all of that is a distraction. It's there to keep us from focusing on the fact that the 99% have the power to take back the power this summer by occupying the lawns of every senator and representative across the country. And of course, Florida would be a great place to start. Yes, sir.
The part that worries me about Trump is he was saying that he wants us to respect police again, and I just gave you my card. I help out with Sheriff County COPWATCH, 56 million views on YouTube. And the part that scared me is he already told Session to go full bore with the police state again. Crack down on pot again, even though half the freaking country is finally realizing this is a lost war. It's just like prohibition didn't work, this didn't work. So that's the part that's scary. I'll respect police when they respect us again. Right now they do not at all. So now they just went to war with us again after all this. We were starting to make progression, you know, holding police accountable and actually having the feds come in and, you know, look at some really bad police departments, which there's one here, multiple here. Yeah, actually there's a bunch here. But anyways, so that's the part that really bums me out and scares me about Trump. You think he's just saying that, or? I
honestly don't know. I mean, the other seriously stupid mistake he's made was giving $54 billion to the military. Okay, now, you need to understand that first off, the U.S. military is documented, as is the rest of the federal government, 50% waste. From 45% waste in weapons acquisitions to 75% waste in Afghanistan. The U.S. military also consumes 60% of the disposable budget of the federal government. 60%. 16% of the total. Giving more money to the Pentagon is like pouring gas on a fire. It's a stupid idea. So I have to think that Donald Trump, who is not a stupid man, is playing to some audience somewhere. Now, where policing went wrong was when it became a budget building exercise and the military-industrial complex decided to militarize the police because they were running out of armies. Okay? So it used to be that as a cop, your responsibility was to take a bullet if there was any doubt and save the citizen. And today, we use SWAT teams for what used to be 2-man arrests. It is absolutely unbelievable. It's unprofessional, it's despicable. And I had an uncle who was a Nassau County sergeant back when cops were real men. You know, so I come from a law enforcement family, and I also come from a spy family, and I also come from a military family. And I will tell you that one of the best monographs ever written by the U.S. Army Strategic Studies Institute is called Lying to Ourselves, Dishonesty in the Military Profession. We have lost our integrity across the board, okay? And I wrote a book called Election 2008, Lipstick on the Pig. And one of the things I realized was that the buck stops here with us. We're the ones who have allowed this to happen. We can't blame Dick Cheney. We can't blame Donald Trump. We can't blame the governor of the state. I mean, you know, we have to blame ourselves. And so we have been basically dumbed down and voter suppressed and pushed into dropping out. And God bless Donald Trump. I can't say it often enough. You just pointed this out earlier. We're here today because Donald Trump made me interesting. Okay? And so that's the value proposition I put to you. You have the power to crap on your congressman's lawn this summer, and I hope you do. Hold on here, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, let me finish my question.
All right, you only get 3 questions tonight.
Not trying to trick you, I'm not trying to make you look bad or link you to Agenda 21.
I'm not worried about that.
I'm just trying to figure out why you said that, and let me read Goal 17. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. I don't think we want to strengthen the means of implementation.
I've already told you I favor abolishing the United Nations, okay?
Why would you say?
Don't nickel and dime me on the 17 points. I don't care. I want everyone to be happy and have food and water and clean medicine.
You don't support forcing those 17 items on here?
No.
That's all I want.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's all.
Stop.
I was wondering if you would allow me the opportunity to tell people in the room about 3 grassroots organizations that I'm involved with.
Wait, say that again?
Would you allow me to tell the people in the room about 3 grassroots organizations?
I'd rather not.
Okay.
We will.
Yeah, after I'm done, okay? Because this is for Paul Rand. Yes.
Are there any terrorists in the world who are not employed by the CIA and so on?
They drive around in green suits around here.
That's a really good question. You know, let me make a point here. I've written some book reviews for professional journals. One of them was called Unhinged, and it was about 2 books on torture. Waterboarding doesn't work. The other one was called Unhinged, and it was about our drone assassination programs. Okay, the CIA is killing 98% innocents with its drone assassination program, and that is assuredly creating not terrorists but freedom fighters. There are a number of good books on why the West hates the West, why the West hates the West, the Eagle's Shadow. I mean, we took over from the British as the purveyors of unilateral militarism, predatory capitalism, and virtual colonialism. And we wonder why people hate us. Because what's being done in our name is not representative of the goodness that is America. It's basically what the bankers want. Okay? Now, you had a question, sir.
In your CIA career, did you know any of this?
That's a really good question. The short answer is no. My awakening came after I left the CIA, with all of my nonfiction books, my reading, my world experience, and so forth. When I was in the CIA, I was like a Jesuit, not questioning, you know, the Jesuit version of reality.
So the people in the CIA know that they're chasing fellow American employees when they're set on the trail of these so-called...
Well, first off, 90% of the CIA sits in a cubicle and doesn't care about anything, okay? Those of us that are out on the street are just going through the motions. It's not possible to be an effective clandestine case officer when you're returning to an official installation 3 times a day or 4 times a day, and you're the only guy in the official installation that's spending money like it's going out of style. I was spending $100,000 a month as a 38-year-old. Okay, I mean, I was very successful, but only in superficial terms. I ran a false flag operation. It cost a lot of money. And several years afterwards, we realized it was a complete failure. Because the people that we thought we were deceiving at the highest levels of this country were working for the people that we were trying to tell them were their enemy. And the lesson that I took from that is that if you don't get counterintelligence right, nothing else matters. Okay, so if you really don't understand, as Trump may or may not understand right now, that he's surrounded by traitors and mediocrities, then you're not going to be effective. I mean, Trump has been stunningly successful, given the fact that he's been under siege from day one. I mean, this is a guy that is trying to push a 10-pound weight up a mountain with a 900-pound weight on his back. So it's hard for him. All right, let me stop there. I think. Oh wait, I'm sorry. In the back, ma'am, and then we'll come to you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then you.
The people I've met over the last 15 years of my life who were in and are now out, who have exposed, are in the isolation, deprivation, alienation situation. And they live like paupers. That's why I help them. How are you doing?
Well, I'm technically unemployed and technically homeless. I have a less than forgiving wife, but I clean the house, I mow the lawn, I do the laundry, and I contribute when I can. But the bottom line is I wouldn't have it any other way. In fact, let me tell you, I was grossing $1.7 million in 2007 with one employee, me. I was paying myself $219,000 and I had a $60,000 a year slush fund, if you will, which I spent on books and other things. And I lost my security clearances when a routine security interview said, well, you know, you say you don't have any really important foreign contacts that you've listed, so tell us about all of your foreign contacts. And I told them about all 7,500. I had a page on each one because I'd run an international conference for 20 years and I trained over 7,500 foreign mid-career officers from over 66 countries. So imagine 3 chimpanzees jumping up and down in a very small room. Okay? Morons. They took away my clearances, which destroyed my business. It cost me my contracts, it cost me my business, and it liberated me. Because now, with no money and no business, I started thinking new thoughts. And that's what led to the Nobel Peace Prize. So I'm not going to get the Nobel Peace Prize, but I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wrote the Open Source Everything Manifesto, and it became cult reading in Anonymous and Bloodsect and a couple of other places. And then I went on to create the whole concept for Open Source Everything Engineering, which can achieve peace and prosperity for everybody at 10% of the cost of the failed Western model. All I need right now is one president willing to take on the deep state, and it'll be a triumph. So you ma'am, and then this patient gentleman here.
I was just going to ask you, since you were talking about the Jesuits, what do you say about this Pope we have now? Is he Luciferian?
I don't know. I mean, I actually like Francis in his own way because he's Latino as I am. And he actually has a serious university degree, not one of these theology degrees. But my sense is he's a figurehead. I don't get the sense he's actually in charge of anything. And I think Benedict resigned in part because he figured that out and he didn't want to be part of it. So I'm going to come over here, and then we'll come over there.
I can't recite the way you said it word for word, but you said something about the blacks and their churches would side with the alt-right or get them to us.
I want to come to Jesus meeting for everybody. And I think the black churches are the one place across America where we can make this happen.
I've spoke to a lot of blacks, and you know, there are a lot of blacks, and I mean, I can't fathom them supporting Trump. I mean, they seem to universally hate him.
Well, yes and no. You're right. The ones that
I've never heard a black person say something about Trump, man. I'll lay it on the table.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But I have never met, until recently, I had never met a black person who understood that Bill Clinton was a pedophile, had no business being in the Black Hall of Fame, and had put more black people in jail than there were slaves at the beginning of the Civil War. They're starting to figure that out now. And Cynthia McKinney and the black leaders in New York are going to make that a sermon across this country. At least I'm hoping they will. Okay? So nobody has ever completely lost soul. And, you know, there's a great book about Bonhoeffer, and he talked about the joy and the passion of the black church. A lot of singing, all this good stuff.
I'm just saying, I think it might take a lot of persuasion on that part.
Well, let me say that this is not up to me. I think it's something we have to try. And I think the hard part is not going to be the blacks and the alt-right coming together, but the alt-left. I mean, these kids are stupid. And they have been brainwashed their whole life, and they just have no idea what it means to have a job and be responsible and do all this other stuff. So the hard nut to crack is going to be the Sandinistas. But you don't need all of the blacks. You only need 20% of the blacks. You don't need all of the whites. You only need 20% of the whites.
I think 20% will still be pretty hard, man.
Okay, be a pessimist. I don't care. Over here.
I see there's a flag in the room here. Can you tell me what's at the top of that flag?
An eagle?
Wrong.
What?
It's a phoenix. The wings are down, the eagle's wings are up. The phoenix is a representation of the Pope. That's the Pope's flag.
So like a Roman flag.
Here you go. I just like the whole thing.
If I'm ever president, I'll get rid of the phoenix, and our national anthem will be America the Beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Run.
All right, why don't I stop, I think, at this point. Now, wait, she wanted to talk about 3 grassroots organizations.
Thanks for
Hold on, so are we done?
No, we're not done. But I did want to ask you one question, Robert, if you could elaborate on your idea of the cyber Minuteman concept and attaching ourselves to an issue like a leech. I've heard you mention that.
Well, the citizen intelligence Minuteman concept was devised by a guy named Politi from Italy who came to my first conference in 1992. What it really means is that citizens have to start taking responsibility for using their powers of observation. I mean, Pizzagate is a good example of both the good and the bad. Pizzagate started to find traces of relationships between people on Facebook. I mean, Jimmy Olifanti or whatever has a picture of himself dressed in stockings and long heels with lipstick and blood all over his face. Okay? And they were able to connect a whole bunch of dots. Now the bad thing is, they assumed that anyone who had their picture taken with this guy was a pedophile or a pedophile supporter. That's wrong because that's not compliant with proper investigative techniques and so forth. So the whole idea here is Thomas Jefferson said it first. The nation's best defense is an informed citizenry. Okay, so why don't we stop and give her the microphone? Come on up here and use the microphone and you can tell people about it.
I do appreciate it.
Hi everybody, my name is Trina and I'm from Brandon, Florida, so I drove up down here to see you all tonight. Very happy to meet you, Mr. Steele, and thank you for your presentation. Okay, everybody in the room here can agree that there's a lot wrong that we have to fix in our country and around the world. There are several organizations that I'm currently actively involved in, and we are doing something about it. We all have to get motivated, we all have to get mobilized. We need boots on the ground here in America like they have over in Afghanistan and the Middle East. I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase. There's a man that I recently met. His name is David A. Frank, and he is on Facebook. He's 68 years old from Indiana, my home state, and he is wanting us all to get out there and go to our local public broadcasting service stations in our area. And what he wants to do is implement a plan where we take back public broadcasting that belongs to the people, and we can't rely on if one president tries to stop this, he's probably going to end up like JFK. One president can't do it, and the 500, however many people in Washington, yahoos, aren't going to fix this problem. It is going to be up to us to fix this. So David A. Frank wants us all to get on public broadcasting service, announce our issues in our communities, and let the communities vote. You take it to Indiana, you take it to Florida, you take it to Kansas, Missouri, all over this country, and get people mobilized where we can, if we can infiltrate the PBS station and give ourselves voices, because that's what the people are lacking, is a voice. That's organization number one, although he's not an organization, he's an individual that has talked to people like me and is talking to others. The second organization is 9/11 Truth Action Project, 9/11 TAP. 9/11tap.org is their website. They have a petition on their website for a truth-friendly Congress. They have a petition that says we need a truth-friendly Congress. We demand a truth-friendly Congress, as well as we need a truth-friendly media. So I would like to ask each and every one of you to go onto that website and sign that petition to Congress, please. The third organization, and I have a pamphlet here for anyone that would like it on 9/11 TAP, and I also have the firefighters for 9/11 Truth. We have firefighters out there too for 9/11 Truth. Now back to 9/11. If we can prove that 9/11 was in fact an inside job, along with whatever our nations held, we're going to go a long way in showing Americans that our government can't be trusted about anything if we can prove 9/11. So one of the organizations that truly has my heart is TAP, and I Am the Face of Truth. Lori, would you hold up my little bag, please, and show your shirt? Lori has a shirt on, and what we do is we make for people's your picture, whether you're using it on LinkedIn, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Google, YouTube. Hold that up, Lori, so they can see the picture. We put your country on it. It says 9/11 Truth in the corner. USA. I don't know if they can see the little pictures, Lori, if you'll hold the bag up. But we put every country down the side. And USA really needs to step up because people don't generally hate us Americans. I think a lot of people realize it is our government, but people really don't like Americans because of what we have all been doing all these years. But anyway, we put Germany, we put Switzerland, France, your country name down the side. We're starting to put your state because I Am the Face of Truth is the name of that grassroots group. I Am the Face of Truth. And anybody that wants one of my cards, you're more than welcome to get a hold of me. I have a bookmark about I Am the Face of Truth. We've had a billboard campaign in the past, and we're trying to get the word out there. Our mission is to wake people up, and our banner profile pictures help do that on social media. So anybody who wants to get involved with either TAP or I Am the Face of Truth, I'll give you my card. We can talk on the phone. We have to start communicating in the truth movement. We've got to get the communication, we've got to organize, and we have set up Facebook groups in every state in the United States for people to start organizing. Thank you, everybody.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about your comments about the NPR. To some extent I've been involved in broadcasts, and kind of navigated through some of the NPR stations and radio stations and that. I'm just curious, what the rest of the details are, because
I don't know. David Frank is the man that started that whole concept and idea, and he says, I've got a better plan for America. He's got several videos. I can give you his phone number before we leave. He would love a phone call from you. I've got his name and number in my phone. Wonderful person to talk to. We just all have to start communicating, start networking, and really get this medicine ball pushed up the hill that we have.
Yeah, I'm all about the media, but they're taking on a huge project.
Yeah, well, we have a huge undertaking, no doubt about it. But what's our choice?
How do you feel about getting the public in each county
to
assemble as an assembly under the First Amendment of the Constitution?
I love it.
They have the power.
Love it.
And if the sheriff doesn't pull a grand jury like he's supposed to through the Magna Carta 1215, then it's up to the people through the assembly to pull a constitutional grand jury. We're working hard on doing just that.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, you get back up. And
I just didn't want to be rude to everybody. Does anyone have any more questions, or you just want to say goodbye? Or
I have a question. If we can go back to 9/11 for a second.
all right, and we haven't asked you about extraterrestrials either.
I was going to do that in the Memphis. The Watchers, because
Robert, do you know?
Hold on, the lady has a question.
Get back 9/11 for just a moment. What about the Brady Bond scam?
What's that?
The Brady Bond scam that was going on in 9/11, where Brady bonds were sold in 1991, coming due in 2000, September.
Oh, yeah.
They got sold to France and Germany and all these different countries, and they all went out the windows in Canada.
I'm just not.
No IOUs.
I'm not smart enough to know all of this stuff, but the other thing is that apparently a whole bunch of Chinese bonds were due the day after. And I don't know what the truth is, but there's just a lot of crap that happened on 9/11 financially. So 9/11 was an atrocity at multiple levels. It was the active murder of 3,000 people by Dick Cheney. It was a massive financial scam. It was used as a basis for. Can you guys go outside, please? It was used as the basis for invading Iraq with 935 lies. Charles Lewis has done a really excellent book on 935 lies that we now know, we're told. So essentially 9/11 was the complete loss of moral integrity in the United States of America.
And the Afghanistan pipeline with the Rambosk Corporation?
All of that is micro. Okay, basically everything is, I don't want to get into micro. All of this is all wrapped up into it. What really matters is that Dick Cheney orchestrated 9/11. Over here, sir?
Have you ever heard of David Wingo?
No.
Never done any studies?
You know, I'm a limited man with limited means. Over here?
Hey, aliens and gifts. Like I've been doing this.
Brzezinski was absolutely an alien. And Henry Kissinger.
I'm reading a book, it's called Unmasking the Devil. And I watched 2 movies on it. It talks about some of the Bible. Oh my God, I can't remember now. But it talks about the Watchers and the Nephilim. Yes. And so what is
Here's what I suggest you do. First off, Amazon has become a really good resource that's free. If you look up books on extraterrestrials and you just read the reviews, and you can use Amazon Look Inside the Book feature and go in and read stuff. I mean, it's a way of getting a cursory impression. If you go to phibetaiota.net, which is free with no ads, I mean, you can subscribe for free and it has no ads. You can look up extraterrestrial and UFO, and you'll see posts by about 80 people over time. My bottom line as an intelligence analyst is that I'm absolutely certain that we have been in contact with extraterrestrials going back to the 1950s, that we have kept it completely secret from the public, and that there will be significant disclosures in the next few years. I'm also quite certain that the Pentagon did not lose $2.3 trillion. They spent it on massive underground cities and on extraterrestrial projects.
Now, the book I was reading, it says that they're trying to open up the gate to the Watchers.
I don't know, that's micro. What matters, I think, is that extraterrestrials exist, and we've been lied to about it, and shit's gonna happen sometime in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, people are disclosing all over the place. Countries are disclosing their records, Chile, Brazil, France. I think it's all gonna come out. And Mike and I were talking about what would it take to wake up the American public. He was thinking that 9/11 would do it. I'm not sure, because 9/11 has been so effectively repressed. It's almost like the JFK assassination. I think a pedophilia scandal would do it. If we came out, if there were credible evidence with pictures of Chuck Schumer and John McCain and Lindsey Graham with children, I think that would blow the lid off the Republican Party, as well as the, but you know, let's go there. How about boiling children? Have you seen how the Chinese boil dogs? That's to adrenalize the blood. It changes the flavor of the meat. Now think about boiling children in order to drink their blood and eat their meat. Okay, I mean, I cannot tell you the degree of depravity that I think we're not aware of in the world. And this goes back through history. This is not just new to the U.S. or the U.K. Yes, sir?
You know, World War I, World War II, and World War III were said to be planned out in 1871 by a man named Albert Pike.
Yes, I've seen that. I'm inclined to agree with it. World War I got rid of the aristocracy. World War II pushed communism to get rid of the Catholic Church, and World War III is coming, and it's Islam.
We're already in World War III with the war of Islam against the...
I have never seen a war that was justified.
My point being is that these people plan out 100 years and hundreds of years in advance these things. And 9/11, I believe, was planned way back in the 40s. After they were finishing up, consummating World War II, they were already planning for this war. And I believe that was what was the Manhattan Project of the development of nuclear bombs. And I believe those buildings were brought down with a nuclear demolition. Nuclear bombs.
It could be.
Disintegrated those buildings and turned them into...
Let me make a larger meta point, which is General Smedley Butler, one of the most decorated Marine Corps generals in history, wrote a book called War is a Racket. Okay, and he described how the banks make back loans and then the Marines are sent in as enforcers. I have never seen a war that was justified. Vietnam was a false war. The Mexican War was a false war. The Cuban-American War. These were all fake news, yellow journalism wars. What's changing now, and let me make this point about Google Gestapo. Eric Schmidt has been organizing social media censorship, not just as a political favor to Hillary Clinton, but because he's test driving a censorship system in the United States of America that he wants to sell to communist China. Imagine that. He's test driving a communist Chinese censorship system in the USA. He's trying to show the Chinese that he can control all of this stuff. So these things are just out of control. All right, the lady there, and then I'll come back to you, sir.
Going forward with your ideas, is there a chance of you getting to meet President Trump and present?
I'm sure if you send him an email, he'll answer it.
I can put it on their website, make certain keywords.
How come Trump hasn't come out from 9/11 being an inside job?
I think he knows it's an inside job. You know, I honestly cannot say I understand Trump at all. What I do think is if my life is a tiny, tiny fraction of his, then he is just being hit over the head with baseball bats from every side. And I'm just amazed that he's even surviving. Now, the man doesn't drink, okay?
He did talk about the 27 pages.
Yeah, but the 27 pages, that's throwing the Saudis. That's throwing the Saudis under the bus.
That's exactly. He's pulled the Band-Aid off, the scab off of 9/11 to have another war, I believe.
The lesson,
is he just another warmonger?
What I learned from watching John F. Kennedy and reading about John F. Kennedy is that Kennedy and Khrushchev established a back channel to Kennedy through Kennedy's mother. And Kennedy said, "Mom, please don't do that anymore." But he had a back channel with Khrushchev. And Khrushchev and Kennedy agreed that the greatest threat to peace was their respective generals. Khrushchev's generals wanted a war with the United States of America. Kennedy's generals wanted a war with Russia, okay? Turns out that Khrushchev and Kennedy trusted each other, and I believe there's a tiny possibility that Xi, Putin, and Trump have had the conversation about waging peace and putting the deep state down. And I pray that that is so. Because I was asked on TV the other day, who is Donald Trump's best friend? And I said, Vladimir Putin. I mean, Putin stands for Christian values, for crying out loud. How crazy is this? So, yes, sir.
This United Counties of America sounds to me like
it's his idea.
To be a very good idea. Can you offer one suggestion to us that would help us to facilitate this whole thing?
It's hard. I'm torn between two thoughts. The first is you need to connect. I mean, personally, I think the Libertarian Party needs to be liberated from the morons that are running it. It's in enemy hands. And the Libertarian Party is the only party that actually has good penetration everywhere. So I think one suggestion I would say to you is see if you can take over the Florida Libertarian Party and try and run that, use that to push this idea. The other thing is, I don't know where PRUMMELL is. It's not working as well as I would like it to on my phone. But what people need right now is a way of communicating and a way of sharing information. And Facebook is not doing it. And I don't know what the alternative is. But I do firmly believe that town hall meetings and face-to-face conversations cannot be replaced by computers. And so it may well be that this kind of meeting is what has to happen. You know, it would amuse me vastly if you, are golden corrals everywhere or just here?
Pretty much everything. You know, they're not in every county, and they're within an hour's drive, maybe or hour and a half drive.
Yeah. But I'm sorry to fall flat on this one, but I just can't think of anything that would help you organize better than Mike is already thinking about. What I want to do is get the black churches going, because I think there's soul there, and there's something we could do with that. Here, sir, and then over there, ma'am.
I agree with you. I'm about ready to switch to the Libertarian Party too, because people are sick of the two-party system. Libertarians at least are, for freedom and no tax.
What's in Aleppo?
Yes, less taxation. That is true. That one's sad.
I want you to know I tried to get the Libertarian and Green parties to run together, and had the Libertarian Party had a brain and not put up two old white guys, one of whose brain is half fried by drugs, they might have had a chance. But the reality is the Libertarian Party right now, the people running it are idiots. They're absolutist idiots who refuse to win. They don't actually want to win, okay? I thought about running as a presidential candidate, but I saw immediately that the fix was in for Gary Johnson. Had I run, I would have said, number one, you're not going to tell me who my vice president is going to be. It's going to be Cynthia McKinney. Number two, I'm going to announce a coalition cabinet tomorrow. And screw you if you can't handle the green on that cabinet, okay? And number three, I ain't going to do jack shit for the Koch brothers, and that's how you pronounce their name, okay? So the Libertarian Party for me is deeply organizationally important and totally morally decrepit at the top. They don't actually want to win an election. Yes, sir.
How do you get past the 501c3 with the churches?
That's a really good question that Donald Trump is answering. The other thing that I've done, because I have a 501c3, and donations are welcome. I mean, because I just spent $1,500 on our website, ramping it up, and we want to start. I own ungrid.vote, which I want to do. What?
Say that again.
Your site. Oh, phi-beta-iota.net. It's like Phi Beta Kappa, but with iota instead of Kappa for intelligence. You can also look up Robert David Steele and you'll get right to it. I have bought ungrid.net, and I'm exploring right now how much it would cost to offer every American citizen a free email, ungrid.net. The only condition is you have to use that as your primary email. Imagine if all of a sudden everybody across America started getting emails from someone's true name at ungrid.net. I think it would have a powerful effect. I also have alt-gov.org, and what we're thinking about doing is trying to create what an honest government would look like. One of the problems, and I'll recite them because I'm the only guy in the United States of America that knows all 10 of these threats by memory. In 2004, Brent Scowcroft was the American member of the United Nations high-level panel on threats, challenges, and change. The 10 high-level threats to humanity in the United States are, in this order: poverty, infectious disease, environmental degradation, interstate conflict, civil war, genocide, other atrocities, including child trafficking, proliferation, terrorism, and transnational crime. The entire U.S. national security state is focused only on interstate war and terrorism. And they create both of those. They don't actually stop them. They ignore everything else. Okay? Poverty actually does more environmental damage than corporations. Now, I mean, think Haiti burning all the firewood. Okay? So we have to have a government, and this is why I tried to get through. I realize now previous didn't deliver the memo. But I wanted Trump to have a grand strategy meeting between election day and inauguration day, so that he could actually have all of his cabinet prospects discuss the 10 high-level threats to humanity, the 12 core policies from agriculture all the way through water, the true economic costs of what it would mean to do all of this, and then out of that would come a grand strategy that he can announce together with election reform and inauguration day, which would immediately give him a base much larger than the 26% or 27% to vote for. But of course, Priebus threw that away. I mean, Reince Priebus is the epitome of the rigged system. He is the rigged system. And by the way, I'm told he's being fired. He's going to be sent to Greece, where he will be very happy because they have an ample supply of small boys for people like him. So Priebus is out, and Pence might be resigning. I pray this is so. Yeah, you can't fire a vice president. You can make him an offer he can't refuse. Pence has been caught stabbing the president back on multiple occasions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Steele,
then I'll come to you, sir.
We all agree that the
Robert, please. My dad is Mr. Steele.
We all agree that the central banks around the world, and our founding forefathers have been fighting this, from Lincoln to Jefferson to Kennedy, all along fighting the centralized banks of the world. And World War II, Nazi Germany, that's what they were fighting, the centralized banks and capitalism. And we went to war over that, and we defeated, and the banks won.
Well, we almost didn't win that war.
Well, what I'm saying is Hitler was actually talking about what we're talking about right here, this fighting of the centralized banks.
We would never have had a war if the banks hadn't funded Hitler. The banks wanted a war.
They wanted the war. Roosevelt and this.
Yes, Roosevelt was a full
terrorist. So we're fighting this same thing. We're trying to. Aren't we going to be crushed?
No.
Aren't we going to be crushed as the same fight has been going on?
Yeah, but I think circumstances are different.
How do we do what they couldn't do before? How do we win this war that's been tried to defeat capitalism, defeat the central bank?
I've given Donald Trump a 7-point plan for closing down the Federal Reserve and not having the economy self-destruct.
Did he get it?
I'm down for
it.
He's read it. I don't know how this is going to happen.
He's read it. He's read it. Well, you start. Well, it's possible to do. The Federal Reserve is not the economy. The Federal Reserve is basically the way in which they loot the economy. So what you're really doing here is you're just closing the loot channel.
I have a question regarding the drugs. Would you legalize all drugs?
Maybe not all drugs, but let me tell you that marijuana and hemp are in the memorandum that we've sent to the president, saying he absolutely, the health plan, it's a dishonest health plan, okay? It has no prices, no government negotiation. In the memorandum, we say not only should you bring in Carl Denninger and do the health plan, but you should legalize not just marijuana, but hemp.
I have a follow-up question is, wouldn't we like kind of bring the peace to the society, because we would free lots of prisoners?
Yes.
The lawyers wouldn't have a job.
Amen.
I agree.
Judges, and
we have judges. We have judges that are sending people to prison because they're being paid by the head. No, I agree. But the bottom line, when Obama had his open government portal, I was one of 4,000 people that was in it. And the single #1 demand of the Obama administration on day one of his first term was legalize marijuana. Now, Jeff Sessions has his own issues, okay? Sessions is trying to be a bad boy. I think he's got some angst there that he's working on. Yes, sir?
I have a question. This is just from my personal knowledge. You talked about the Kennedy file a couple times. Why is it that when the 50 years came up, they reclosed it for another 50 years just because of Jackie?
Well, first off, I think Jackie knew full well who murdered her husband, and she kept silent to protect her children, and they still got young Kennedy, who was killed with an electromagnetic pulse gun, I think, shot up into his airplane as he was landing at Martha's Vineyard. CIA does not want you to know that CIA assassinated one of our presidents. And I really recommend The Devil's Chessboard. It's really an excellent, excellent book. And at the end of my review, I list a number of other books. I've reviewed about 10 books on the Kennedy assassination, including Someone Would Have Talked. and JFK and the Unspeakable. And there's a DVD that places George Bush in Dallas, as well as Yitzhak Rabin, as the Israeli participant in the cabal that assassinated Kennedy, places them in Dallas. So if you go to 58iota.net and you look up Steele JFK, you'll get right to the link for each of my reviews of those books, and you can read your heart's content. Yes, sir, and then you.
There's another website. It's from JFK to 911. If you haven't seen the video, it's 3 hours, and it explains that 7 people that shot at President Kennedy, and the one that was in the sewer that shot him real close, because the white mark on the pavement, on the side of the pavement, on the curbing, was where the driver was to stop in case he wasn't killed.
Wow.
And that was the final shot. Took his head up, and you could see it go up.
I heard Jacqueline Kennedy might have been one of the shooters.
Well, there's other websites that said that, look, you can see the gun come across from the driver, and a sheep had shot him, but that's all disproved. What they're trying to show is that the driver turned and shot over his shoulder like this, but what you don't see is the sun shining off the top of the head of the passenger, which looked like a gun, and it wasn't a gun.
We should look at the film with they show that Jacqueline Kennedy may have been one of the shooters. Serious.
And that wouldn't even make sense because there's too many witnesses out there would have saw that.
Well, that's why they confiscated all the film, but the Shabru film shows clearly she had a gun in her left hand, she put it under her chin, blew his head off.
Too many people were standing right there on the street.
Dropped it up behind his back.
Well, let's agree to disagree. Now, we do know Jackie was mad. He was packing 2 prostitutes at a time.
Exactly.
So she had ample reason to shoot his ass. Wait, this lady here, and then I'll come to you.
You're telling us that September, October is going to be very crucial.
According to Martin Armstrong.
I will watch it. The budget is also.
Yeah. Oh, we have a shitstorm coming up.
We have a hope storm coming up.
And I honestly don't. I mean, if I were Trump, if I were president, I would be spending most of my time talking to Xi and Putin, and then the ASEAN countries, and then the South American and African countries, and I would be talking about a new financial world order that basically cuts the Rothschilds and the Vatican off at the knees. We don't need them. We certainly don't need them creating false credit. You know, I mean, these guys create false digital bank accounts and go buy real property, and nobody's the wiser. It's insane. So hang on, this lady here had a question, I hope, not a
I was
statement.
just going to expand upon you saying, agree to disagree, that we should all keep in mind not to let our differences divide us.
Yes, absolutely right. Yes, ma'am.
What do you know about the Antarctica?
What do you want to know? Everybody who's anybody has been down there.
What is going on over there?
Well, I don't know.
There's no end to it.
There are a number of books and other things that say that there is in fact a very habitable area of Antarctica, and that there are huge caverns underneath Antarctica, and that a portion of the Nazi leadership and gold may have relocated there. Certainly we know that a portion relocated to northern Argentina, which looks like Bavaria, and the inns have Nazi flags and the whole bit. So I don't know what's going on in Antarctica. What I do know is that our government is operating on roughly 2% of the relevant available information, and it lies to us about what it knows. So one of my missions in life is to build the open source agency, and out of that the world brain, and my goal is to put all human beings in touch with 100% of all knowledge in all languages and mediums all the time. It'll take me about 20 years. But it's doable. It's doable. It's doable. Shall we wrap it up?
I have one last
Yes.
question. If election reform is issue number 1, what would you say the next 3 are in order?
Oh, easily the Trump channel. We have a stupid public that needs to be rapidly re-educated. I mean, I'm actually sympathetic toward the gulag these days. I think there are a lot of people that would benefit from a forced re-education. But I would say re-education of the public is huge. That's the second one. And the third one is we've got to deal with the traitors. I estimate 500 across the U.S. government and 5,000 across the U.S. country. We have got a lot of traitors in high places, and the FBI is simply not a serious counterintelligence agency. I mean, I love them. I want to make them stronger. I'd love Judge Napolitano to be the next director of the FBI. But those are my big 3. Below that, you've got health reform and tax reform. We've absolutely got to make it possible. And again, health reform, it's not that simple. You know, I mean, Carl Denninger has pointed out that if we stop paying for type 2 diabetes from people who have made bad lifestyle choices, we balance the federal budget overnight. But you can't do that to people overnight. You actually have to make it possible for them to eat good, healthy food and not be poisoned and not have GMOs that mess up their digestive tract and so forth. So this is a 20-year plan. And that's why a grand strategy, I think, is one of my top 3 or 4. Trump hasn't figured out how to think about everything all of the time. And that's what grand strategy is. And it is possible to do it. I've got a beautiful diagram of what I would do. I would throw the press out of the White House. And then that area would become Trump Studios, which would do 7-minute fireside chats, not just from the president, but from secretaries, assistant secretaries, action officers. All questions from the press and from citizens have to come in as short videos or texts, and then they're answered by exactly the right person in the government. No more of these pampered prima donnas in a White House theater and an idiot like Spicer trying to fumble his way through. And the other 2 things that would be in there would be the grand strategy cell and the open source agency. I mean, let me give you a quick example. General Zinni, when he was commanding general of the Central Command, which was in 2 wars and 12 joint task force actions, said that he was getting 4% of what he needed from the secret intelligence community, costing $70 billion a year. 4%. I helped create the open source intelligence unit for the Special Operations Command. Within a year, that unit, I wasn't the leader, I was a consultant. The leader was a genius. Within a year, that unit was documented as answering 40% of all soft questions worldwide, including Russian military maps for denied area border crossings, for $5 million. 40%, $5 million. 4%, $70 million. That's what's wrong with the U.S. intelligence community. It's a cesspool for burning money. That's a terrible mix of metaphors, but anyway. Yes, ma'am?
Can we get messages to Donald somehow without going through prerequisites?
You know, there's a guy named Samuel Milgram who did a very famous experiment. It's where the term 7 degrees of separation comes from. It's highly likely that you know somebody who knows somebody who can call Donald Trump. But you have to figure out who that is. Okay, what this guy did, what Milgram did, was he sent 1,000 packages out across the United States, and he described a single target in Boston. And he said, give this package to someone you know who might move it toward this guy in Boston. And then he tracked all of them. He found out that the average number of links required to get it back was 7. And lawyers actually played a very big role, because you would give it to a lawyer who would give it to a congressman who would pass it over to the other congressman who would then move it down to the stockbroker. So we're all connected. My problem is I don't know who's connected to who. What I do know is that I think thousands of people have called the White House comment line on my behalf. And we know that we've had one White House petition where the votes were systematically being downgraded. I mean, we actually have a screenshot. It climbs up to 2053 and then boom, drops down 50 points. It's amazing. Well, I get a lot of talented people, young people especially, who come in and say, hey, here's what I got. You know, and so I learn more than I would if I were just doing this by myself. I would love to see you guys support this county initiative. Try that here. I'd love to see you guys organize to scare the crap out of your congressman. And beyond that, I honestly, I'm placing my faith in God in the future. I mean, it's going to happen. I honestly, God, let me finish on this and I'll come to you. I sense this massive cosmic convergence of good. I really do. I mean, even with extraterrestrial disclosure and pedophilia scandal and everything, I have the sense that we're heading toward a global reboot. And America the Beautiful is part of that reboot. And I don't know the details. I don't know Trump's role in it. I don't know if I will play a role in it. But certainly, I'm very, very interested in having Trump talk to me because I think I can save his ass between now and September. Yes, sir.
To expound on what you're talking about, Rick, that movement, awakening, has actually started to manifest since 2009, prophesied in the scriptures. And one of the things that I would suggest, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I go around talking to people about 9/11, yada, yada, and every time I try to open somebody's eyes to 9/11, I ask them what it means to them, and they see the Twin Towers. We need to expand that term, 9/11 and Tower 7. You got to Tower 7 and 90% of them haven't got a clue what you're talking about.
No, I mean, look, this was all very successfully repressed. Right. Very successfully
I'm just saying, for those who do know, add that to your verbiage.
Well, if you go to 58iota.net and you look up 9/11, you'll get a whole bunch of cool posts. And by the way, if you go look up false flags, you'll get cool posts. I wrote a 70-page, I wrote a chapter with 70 anomalies in Orlando and sent it to Comey by certified mail, asking him to comment. I'm pretty sure Orlando was a false flag. And it's just astonishing to me that the public is asleep on this point.
The trigger words is people use all the time, though.
Yeah, nobody's. And nobody's in Manchester either. Okay? And the Queen is being photographed with someone who is wearing their clothes with a sheet quickly thrown over them, no gown, you know, she's smiling, obviously not wounded, no scar tissue. And the Paris false flags, I found it remarkable that a bomb went off and there wasn't a single cut in any of the fabric chairs.
Did you see the video of that?
I saw a lot of stuff. I mean, it's all fake.
Well, I said those video was a training exercise, but then they made it look like it was a real thing.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, shall we wrap up? Yes.
I want to plug a video that I watched or listened to last night. You did a radio interview and it's on YouTube and it's called "The Deep State is Coming." The Deep State.
Oh yeah.
Really good. So
well, thank you.
If
If you guys have any brain cells left, you can go to robertdavidsteele.com, and then under appearances, you'll get right to where all of my videos and audios are. I mean, Dave Janda, the Hagman report. I was really made by the Hagman report. That's the report that put me on the map with the alt-right. Hagman and Hagman. All right, yes they are. So let's stop there. Yes, I will, without shame, take donations. You can put them in that jar over there. You can also use the button at Phi Beta Iota. And everything I do is free. Okay? Everything I do is free. Everything I publish at Amazon is also free online. And thank you for the speaker. All right, send people my way.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave a, let's say, actually, yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But you know, do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, you know, at least I can do it. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now. You know, $1 a day. I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.